What's up, Duke fans? Welcome to the Devil's Den podcast. I'm your host, Josh Smith, joined by my co-host, Raul and Shu. So this is kind of a special episode for us. It's our 200th as just the three of us kind of revitalizing this thing for the Devil's Den. Shouts to John Watson. Appreciate you for letting us jump in on that. So we figured we would do some storyline stuff, just kind of recap when we took over, some things that stood out, kind of maybe talk about like a little bit of personal fandom in here. We're also going to try doing video going forward a little bit. This is hopefully going to be our first attempt at this. We'll see. Kind of get our feet wet a little bit. So that'll be streaming over on the TheDevilsDen.com YouTube page or at the Devil's Den 247. So, fellas, I guess welcome to video. Welcome to showing your faces. Nice to see you. Happy. I guess we can jump right in. So we started this not at the beginning of Kay's final year, but kind of like, I don't know, somewhere around that November, December timeframe, right? That's what we said. We kind of took over right around then. Duke was ranked number 2 at the time, had already had some pretty big wins. If you remember over Kentucky, Gonzaga, or that Kentucky game was where Trevor Keels kind of went off a little bit, right? Then obviously you had the Gonzaga game. Shu, I think you were at that one. Paolo had the big first half before he started cramping. Obviously, that turned into a Final Four run, which was our first one in what was that, 6 or 7 seasons, depending on how that math worked out, which was kind of cool for us because it was our first season kind of doing this. So that was really neat. Big year for me, and I'll toss it out. I know I've been ranting here. So big year for me, though. So my daughter was born in October of 2021. So that was really cool to kind of have her go along for the Final Four ride. We can talk about some of the heartbreak at the end there if you want to, fellas. But just off the top, what kind of stands out to y'all about that first season?
Well, I think when did we? I think I wrote it down there. We found out that Kay was going to be retiring in like June of 2021, so right around this same time of year.
Yeah.
And just kind of heading into that season, there was, a lot of conflicting feelings for me about that. He'd been there my entire life, but at the same time, he was, in his mid 70s, and it's just like, okay, it's probably time to get a fresh start on the program. And I remember thinking, okay, this is a really good way to do it. We had Scheyer set up, to take over, and that was all kind of a known quantity going into the season. And, in retrospect, I think my feeling was right. I'm sure you guys would agree with that, right?
Yeah, I mean, clearly, right. I think the crazy thing about that, though, is I remember in some of the chats that we had in our like small groups, some of the groups that we're in on Facebook and stuff, a lot of people were like kind of ready for Kay to kind of leave there, like towards the end a little bit. And I just remember kind of being like, no, the grass isn't greener, dude. Like, this is still the GOAT that we're talking about. And John's made it seamless, right? Still not saying that you would just ditch Kay for that, but I mean, John has made it seem like there hasn't been a drop off at all.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
you've seen it in other blue blood programs when a Hall of Fame coach leaves or retires. It's not easy to step in and fill those shoes. Like Raul and you, I had some trepidation about John because he had never been a head coach before. I trusted him. I know he knows basketball, and I know he loves Duke. The recruiting angle part of it, like, is he going to be able to keep the train going, so to speak? And he's not only done it, he's added a couple cars to it, I think.
Sure.
So, looking back from that first year, obviously I wasn't in the camp of I'm ready for Kay to leave. I wanted to enjoy all of it. That's why I went to as many games. I think that year was the most games I've been to in a season. Again, went out to Vegas to see Gonzaga, went to Columbia to see Ohio State. I think I went down to Clemson that year. That was the Wendell Moore where he got kind of hurt on that fast break layup, but a handful of games. Just wanted to kind of relish in the last season of Coach K, and then obviously ending down in New Orleans, which wasn't as the way we planned, but so it goes.
Yeah, I mean,
That OSU game, that was a close loss by Duke, right?
Yeah, we were. As I was thinking about it earlier, it was kind of similar to this Houston game. Like, I think we were up like 10 or 11 in the halftime. Like, felt good. We had been kind of controlling the whole game. And then just something that happened over the last 10, 11 minutes where we just couldn't score the ball. I think we got outscored like 21-9 over the last 10 minutes.
Yeah, that's weird because that was never even really that team's problem. They didn't have any issue scoring, really.
Mhm.
When you look back on them, I think they finished as the number one offense. So, yeah, but I think even with that loss, we entered conference play, and that would have been when we did our first podcast. It was like a conference preview.
Yep.
And we entered conference play with only one loss, I believe. So I don't know, how were you guys feeling about the team at that time? I know it's hard to remember specifically, but Palo was looking really good, right? He had 20 points in the first half versus Gonzaga. Obviously had the cramping issue, but overall, Keels had really impressed in that Kentucky game, and it turned out that was kind of his high point. But still, yeah, I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on that season.
At risk of sounding dumb because somebody could go back and listen to it, I feel like we had to have been pretty high on the team at that point. Now, when you go back and look at it, like I think we lost like our third conference game, like at home to Miami. So it's like, all right, it might have dipped a little bit there. But I think for me, after that Gonzaga game, it was like clearly Paolo is just elite. But I do remember being a little bit like, we got to figure this cramping thing out, man. Like we got to figure the cramping thing out. And without looking at the stats, like I don't really remember when AJ just went on that like absolute heater, but it had to have started somewhere around that time. That conference play, it just didn't last long enough, right? It was like February, I think, was just ridiculous. January maybe was too, maybe even early March, but towards the end, it kind of
he came on. He came on real slow, and then
it's
he
like 58% from three for a little while though, for a while. So that was probably the biggest surprise, I guess, or kind of breakout. You just didn't know what you were going to get from AJ coming off the injury.
I mean, he had that major game at Carolina where he scored 27 on them.
Yeah.
That was the first game, and then obviously, look, say what you will about Hubert, but he did. I think he switched Leaky to guarding AJ the second and third time because it's kind of like Paulo's going to get his against whoever's guarding him. But if you stop AJ from adding an extra 25 or 27, you probably got a good shot.
Yeah. Pulling it up here, it looks like it would have been right after the Ohio State game, actually, that AJ really started to find his groove. So we played South Carolina State, which is obviously not a great opponent, but he would go 7 of 8 in that game, 3 of 4 from 3. And then, from that point, like almost to the end of the regular season, he's like 50%, 51% from 3. So yeah, just that floor spacing element that he gave us was huge for our offense overall. And then you had Mark Williams, obviously, as this big lob threat and great rebounder. And so yeah, I remember being really happy with the 3 through 5. There were some question marks in the backcourt a little bit, maybe, because if you guys remember, Roach didn't really start playing super well until the tournament.
Yeah. Well, and Wendell, like in the non-con was like almost like a national player of the year kind of candidate for a little bit there, dude. He was playing point guard for us, basically. I think he had a triple double or like damn near had one. And so I thought that was going to trend. And unfortunately, he ended up having a pretty good season, but there was like a stretch there, man, where Dell was just looking awesome. Keels had a little bit of kind of up and down there too, right? Like he kind of popped pretty good early, and then his final game played really well down there too.
It's weird to think his best games were probably his first and his last.
Maybe so, yeah, maybe so. Our freshmen definitely did not let us down. But before we kind of get to that like ending. What was there kind of a moment like in the tournament that kind of stood out for you all? Because I know there's a couple like easy ones for me, particularly MSU, the Michigan State game and the Texas Tech game. But was there something like in particular about one of those that you kind of look fondly back on?
Well, I remember the Texas Tech team. I think they had
that no middle defense, historic defense.
And Jeremy just carved it up.
Yeah, that would have to be it for me too. I wish I could remember the exact like scoring run we went on, but we scored something crazy in the last like 7 or 8 minutes of that game. We put up like 20 points or something against the nation's number 1 defense. So that was definitely the one for me. The Michigan State one was fun, like you mentioned too. Arkansas game was kind of ugly. Not the most fun.
Yeah, because we could have had Gonzaga there again, which would have been crazy to play them again back out west. The Texas Tech one was super impressive. I think the Michigan State one stands out just a little bit because you're literally there Like it could be a second round kind of exit, and then it just propels you to a Final Four. And that's when, to me, Jeremy just like he hits that 3 against Michigan State, and you see like K, like he's starting to feel it. Like, all right, we got something here. And to see him kind of emerge and just murder that middle of the defense against Texas Tech, man, just all those middies, all those little kind of floaters he was just hitting, carried us to a Final Four, man.
I think that's the biggest thing for me that year, though, in the tournament run was the finality of knowing that it was K's last go around, right?
Yeah.
Like, I'm always nervous in the tournament. You don't want to get knocked out early. Those first, that first weekend, you're kind of on edge. But knowing that, the next loss is Coach K's last loss, and you obviously want to go out with a national championship. It just made the stakes even higher, and so obviously you get Michigan State in that second round game. Tom Izzo. I think that was the game
for 2019.
That was the game I went to. It was in Columbia or Greenville. It might have been Greenville, South Carolina. One of those things that you got to win any way necessary, and we were able to do that and ultimately get to New Orleans.
Yeah, I think it's just kind of unfortunate that it had to be UNC that we were matched up with in the Final Four that year, because if it had just been some random team, just pick any team you want, right?
St. Peter's.
Yeah, exactly. That would have been nice for sure. But yeah, even if it was a really good team, like if it had been a Houston or whatever, right? I can't even remember who were the best teams that year, but well, obviously Kansas. Like, let's say we had lost to Kansas and they had been on our top of the bracket. I think you could look back on that season and be like, wow, it was such an accomplishment for K to get to the Final Four in his final season. Like, after not having been there, in multiple years.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just that, like, the cloud of it being UNC and UNC being an 8 seed as well, that kind of hangs over it. But I still feel like with time, I've gotten to appreciate that team a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. I think both things can be true. Like, I don't think the Carolina loss affects the Duke fandom as much as they kind of want it to now. But I would certainly admit and say that at the time, once we beat Texas Tech, I started to maybe buy in a little bit to just the story, like, the ending of this saga, just culminating in the title. And then you see Carolina there, and then I start to think, there's no way. Like, after what they just embarrassed us in K's last home game, there's just no way. And I wasn't scared of Kansas either.
Kansas,
right?
The storybook.
That was his first one. That's the last one. Like, let's just tie all this thing up, man. And I just started to buy into it a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's not to jump to, too far ahead here, but I think that happened a little bit this year for me again too, where I just started to think, man, Coop is just gonna run this thing out, number 1 overall, player of the year, win a title, just do the whole thing. And I think that was like the kind of shocking. I remember walking up the stairs. My daughter was up. She had woke back up. So I was walking downstairs to get her a bottle. We're walking back up, and Mark misses the free throw. Love comes down, hits the shot. And I was like, yeah, let's just run this one on up, big girl. And that was it, man. That was it. But yeah, I hate it ended that way to them. But I guess in its own kind of way, maybe that's a storybook ending too, man, just not for us.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely an interesting and poetic narrative from their perspective, right? And they're still hanging on to that years later. But that was one of the, definitely, I was super confident going into that game. I thought, okay, Duke's got the revenge factor. They've been the better team all season. I thought Duke might win by 10 or 15, but some weird things happened in that game too. Like
the Mark 2 fouls early was the biggest thing.
That was really brutal. That was, and Mark's a good free throw shooter, man. Just
he was 8 for 9. He was 8 for 9 going into that game in just the tournament alone. He had missed 1 free throw, and
well, it's hard when you've been sitting for 25 minutes or whatever.
Sure.
And
a big situation too. I mean, that's.
Yeah, and that's, you got a guy like Caleb Love who's going to take those kind of shots. I mean, it lost him the game. I watched him airball it 2 days later against Kansas. I watched him take a shot like that against us this year at the half that led to a Cooper just run. And sometimes he's going to hit those, and most of the time that's going to happen. But
and they had a little lightning in a bottle that season in retrospect, with just
at the end
how
of them,
everything came together for them.
They were bad. They were bad, right? Until like a week before that senior night game or something, man. It was rough.
Yeah, I think Pitt beat them by like 30.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a bunch of little things like obviously Dawson Garcia left the team at a certain point, and then that just gave Brady Manick like that role in the starting
The
lineup.
light that he needed. Yeah. Yeah. But still, man, it was fun for that to be our first one to see a cover Final Four. K's last season. You cover a guy like Paolo, number 1 pick, killing it in the league. And then we got to do another first the very next year, man. We turn right around and we get to cover Jon's first year, Coach Scheyer, right? So I guess we'll segue right into that here. Brings in a pretty loaded class, brought in a transfer to this was our first media day, right? So the first time we went, because it was him, Roach, Jacob Grandison was there. Yeah. So I guess let's start with that. So we'll kind of toss around. We've talked about this before, but one of the biggest storylines here. So what was that like for you first time, first season, not seeing K walk out, seeing Jon come out and kind of being the man?
I mean, it was definitely surreal because, Jon's a couple years younger than me. Our college careers overlapped a little bit. But, obviously my entire life, Coach K has always been there. And then all of a sudden he's not, right? But, again, going back to that first year, it was just, to me, it was all about, can Jon get the job done, which is winning big time games. You don't have to win a national championship every year, but, we can't have a quad 1 record that's, 6-27 or something like that. You got to win big games. So, little shaky to start. I remember the Virginia and the Virginia Tech games, like the whole thing that went down, Kyle getting hit in the throat. And it didn't seem like Jon was really ready to stand up and kind of be that fiery figure that Coach K was for a long time. So, there was some questions about, will he ever get a technical called on him, stuff like that. So, that was my first, impressions of seeing Jon, I guess.
Yeah, well, I feel like it was definitely surreal, but I think it felt pretty comfortable for me pretty quickly. I feel like I got used to seeing him on the sidelines, probably just because he had been with the program already on the sidelines for multiple years. And then, of course, he had been a player not that long before. So if you really think about it, he was there most of the time from 2007 to when he took over. Like there were a few years there where he wasn't. But I mean, there was definitely a rough start with especially the offense. I remember just really struggling to start the year. There were a couple good wins earlier. There was like Xavier was a nice win, but then you get just demolished by Purdue. That Oregon State game was like, that was
brutal, man.
That was the low, even though Duke did win that was the lowest I felt about the team. And it's like,
that was on Thanksgiving, I believe, too.
And it was just like
PK brutal. Brutal watching that one. Yeah.
Well, the Kansas game, I feel like we had a chance to win that game. We just didn't close it in the final 2 minutes or whatever. And that seemed like that was like a reoccurring theme for that season. We just couldn't close in the final minutes of games.
Yeah, I think to me too, it's such a night and day thing we're looking at now. But I remember at the end of this year, kind of being like, the one thing though is like, I'm you lose 9 games, that's fine. Like you're 27-9, that's good. That's pretty damn good. But not used to really getting our teeth kicked in like 4 or 5 times this season either, right? Like now maybe
big time losses,
once, but I mean State beat us by like 25.
Yeah, well, that was the year State rolled us like 20-1 to start the game or something.
Miami beat us by like 23 or 24 too. It was like, ooh.
And then Purdue was obviously like 16 or 17 point loss.
Yeah, Blake beat us by like 10 or 11 or 12 too. Yeah. So there's a few that like really got away from us. And I think the biggest thing, and not to just kind of steamroll through all the storylines here, but like that doesn't happen anymore, right? Like it hasn't happened like as recently. We've lost, but even the year right after, it's the only time you lost by double digits was the final game, which sucks. Right. But
and of course, last year was like every loss was by like 6 points or less, right? So
Yeah,
very close games, and we could have potentially won all of them.
yeah,
And just also, I would say that the fluidity of what the product looks like, right? That first year was just this ugly, bruising kind of style. And when you have a new coach out there, you don't know like exactly like how he really wants to play, right? So you're
sure.
worried when you see the product the first year. It's like, oh, is this how it's always going to look, right? And it turns out it was just a product of the personnel. But we had Flip and Ryan Young out there a lot to start, especially because Lively wasn't ready. And if we were winning games, it was because of offensive rebounds, right? It wasn't because of good shooting. It wasn't because of like great execution. It was just like essentially really slow paced bully ball.
It's such a stark contrast. I'm just thinking about how we
Yeah.
played this last year. It's so weird to kind of look at it that way. Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing that stands out though is just being able to win that ACC tournament at the end of the year, and how much I just fell in love with Derek Lively, man. Like those
Oh, yeah.
that 10-game win streak that team went on was really fun. It was really cool. To get in there and to be able to do that and to sweep UNC. So that was my first Duke UNC game in Cameron. You went to that one. And so to be able to see that in a close game and sitting like right there when I think Caleb Love goes up and Derek just crushes it, dude, just crushes him. That was really fun. That was, I think Paolo and Dell were in the house. Do what?
He had what, 7 blocks?
Like 7 blocks. Yeah. I think he only had like 4 points. They were both just off like offensive rebounds where he just puts them back in. And then Roach just kind of going hero in both UNC games. They both were almost the exact same, just Jeremy torching somebody in a ball screen up top. That was fun. So, didn't end great. You get that Tennessee game, which you kind of kicked in again a little bit there. Kind of got bullied a little bit, which, to his credit, we didn't see that much last year either. So I guess that's the biggest takeaway for me. Anything else from y'all for that kind of first season there?
I just thought that there was a clear progression of the team. They got better as the year went on. I mean, if you think about it, that Pitt game in the ACC tournament, I don't know if you guys remember that, Duke put up like 93 or 95 points.
Yeah, that is right.
Like 30.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of like looked a lot more free flowing. Flip was hitting, pick and pop threes. It just, the product looked good, like in a way that it hadn't earlier in the year. And you just kind of have to wonder, like, could they have made a little bit more of a run if Mark Mitchell's not out for that Tennessee game? Maybe that's not enough to make a difference. Maybe just like the experience level was too different or something.
Yeah, and you never really got Derek Whitehead either. You almost forget about him, kind of like in Duke War, really. But I remember being really excited for him coming in, man. Like he was like my most exciting player in the class when he committed, and just could never really get healthy. And I have to look. I probably should have, but I haven't heard much going on from Derek's side since. So
he had like 1 or 2 good games this last season for
a
team. Like he had a 16-point game, that kind of thing, but nothing special really.
Yeah. So, hopefully.
Well, as I talked about like the pressure on Coach K in his final year, did you guys think that there was pressure on Jon in his first year?
I think he had to at least be competent, right? He couldn't, the wheels couldn't just completely come off. He had to make the tournament, and he had to like at least split with UNC, at least be in the top like 3 or 4 of the ACC, that kind of thing. Which he did all of that and more because he won the ACC tournament. I don't think anybody was necessarily expecting that. Yeah,
and I think when you get the year to plan too, I think that helps you a ton because there's going to be pressure either way. But it also might kind of increase a little bit of the pressure because it's like, all right, well, now you do have a number 1 class coming in or number 2 class, whatever it ended up being. I think it might have been number 1 class. And so it's like, all right, you do have Jeremy Roach coming back from a Final Four team. So I think they're, that helps being able to have your own guys there a little bit. But absolutely, there's pressure, man. Absolutely. You go lose that first game to Kansas. It's like, okay. And then you kind of get kicked around a little bit by Purdue. It's like, all right. And then, it just starts to get there, man. And there's a conversation at some point we had that year of like, not panic time, but like we're on that kind of bubble. We don't really have great wins. Xavier's our best win right now. And then they went on a 10-game winning streak, won the ACC tournament, and that was that. But I think that's, to me, that was the the highlight there, is just to be able to get some hardware year one. I'm sure that was pretty special for Coach too. But we can talk a little bit going forward if you want, or go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to ask, do you guys remember, because obviously I think Lively, Whitehead, and Flip were all like top 3 or top 4 recruits, right? Something in there.
Lively and Flip were definitely like
Lively was one in certain,
Yeah.
depending on where you looked, right?
Yep.
And Flip was like 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And obviously Whitehead was coming off an injury, but he was still like highly thought
He
of.
was up there.
He's got to be in
Mark,
the
I
top
think, was like 15th or something
Yeah.
like that. He was somewhere around 12 to 15. And I think Tyrese came in the 20s or something, 30s or something right there. But
so just to your point, that puts more pressure on. Yeah. You know, if he had been coming in with just a, you know, really kind of mediocre roster, like, okay, there's a different kind of pressure. The pressure is to start recruiting better. But it's a different thing. It's like everybody knew he had the talent there.
Yeah, I'm curious too, and then we will go on. Just because it made me think, like, I wonder if he felt any pressure, like, with that whole Derek Lively situation, because you don't have the Coach K to fall back on and say, look, this is how I develop guys. This is what I do. If you get a number one guy to come in there and turns into kind of Scala Bissier on you a little bit, it's like, ooh, that's not great. I wonder if he did feel pressure there to like, oh, I got to get this guy going, man. I want more guys like this to come in here. Ended up working out phenomenally. And Derek's, you know, it been great in the pros too when he can be healthy. So, you know, that's maybe if we get him back on here, we'll bounce back to that. I doubt we'll go back that far, but should have done it when he came on the first time. But
be fun to get Lively on here, actually. But
that would be a great player to get on, man. Yeah, Derek's
hard to get pro players though, obviously, for obvious reasons. But
yeah, no doubt. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about the next year then. So Duke loses to Tennessee in the second round. You come back, basically didn't lose anyone to the portal, right? So this was the first time that happened. Brings back pretty much everyone. You lose Lively and Derek to the NBA. Come in, you have a pretty good class coming in too. You have Caleb Foster, Sean Stewart, TJ Power, Jared McCain. Only one of those guys still remains on the roster. Only one of those guys played more than one season here at Duke too, which is kind of crazy to think about now. But put a lot of pressure on us, right? So if you remember, Tyrese was also mocked like top 10 or something coming into the season. And then obviously you had Flip that was marked pretty high. Duke is preseason number 2. Where did y'all fall on that? I remember I was pretty high on this group coming in.
I mean, I asked Flip at Media Day whether he thought this was a, you know, national championship caliber team, and he said he did.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I don't know that I was as pumped about it as like it would have been entering the 2017 season. That was the one where you guys bought the Final Four tickets. If you guys remember,
yeah. Oh, I remember.
We had Grayson Allen coming back with Jason Tatum and Harry and
Matt Neal, and that was that was it right there. Yeah.
So I wasn't quite as high as that, but it's still like I think a lot got colored by the way Duke finished the season the year before, right? Like honestly, they were a 5 seed. They were just okay, but the fact that they finished on that like 10-game winning streak, won the ACC tournament. And you can look at that Tennessee game and be like, okay, they should have gone further in the tournament, but you know, Mark was out. That's an experienced team, all that, right? So you're returning everybody and you're just banking on continuity and internal development. And yeah, so I was, you know, the top 2 ranking seemed pretty right to me, to be honest.
Well, I think that was the only time we'd had like 3 or 4 guys return, and
yeah.
You know, starters in almost a decade or more. I mean, from pretty much 2015 on, you're just churning over starting 5s year by year.
Yeah, yeah.
And the fact that we didn't lose anybody to the portal when so many teams were, you know, already that was already happening a lot at that point.
And bringing in a class that we were pretty high on too, right? And now Jared really popped. But I think, you know, we had Jeff Goodman on here talking about like TJ Power too, right? Not no shade to Jeff. Like TJ was killing it there that summer where he just really blew up. And so
freak athlete Jon Stewart, and just, you know,
Yeah, you just had the pieces there that you thought, and then it turned out where, Mark never really didn't take the jump in the shooting, and Tyrese definitely was not a top 5, top 10 kind of guy right there. Had some injury stuff that kind of popped in. But you did get Jared, and Jared was special, man. That FSU game, and then the I'm gonna forget who was James Madison. Yeah, that was. I mean, that was really fun. That was, to me, at moments, was almost like if you're too young to really remember or have watched like JJ at Duke, it's not quite that, but like those 2 games in particular where he's just unguardable and he's just going to pull up from wherever, anywhere. I mean, that one against Florida State where he's just dribbling down. He's like, oh, wait a minute. Let me take some step back in transition and just, I'm going to bury this, and just bottoms it like no rims. It's that was what JJ was doing. That was JJ level stuff, man. That was fun.
Yeah, I mean, nothing can like blow open a game like a great shooter, right? It's like great 3-point shooter specifically.
Yeah.
You think about like how many games were just like over when he got hot. Same thing with Isaiah Evans last year. Same thing with Andre Dawkins.
Yeah.
Yeah, the guys that can hit like 20 points and a half just by bombing on you and like 8 shots or something. It's like, oof, okay, that's gonna do. That's gonna play every day of the week. But I think one thing too that we didn't hit on in Jon's first season, how much of it at the end there makes it like, I guess, how do I want to say this? How much impact does it have that if you think coming back in? So K loses that game to Carolina, they lose in the championship game. They come in preseason number 1. All their guys are back too, right? And so you're thinking here, okay, they're going back, and they're probably going to do, this is going to be 16, 17 all over again. They end up completely falling on their face. We get the sweep. They miss the tournament. How much of that plays into like how you look back on this thing? Because if they handle business, sweep us, win a championship, then I think the pressure really ramps up, especially if this then also happens the next year, right? Like if we're getting into what ifs and stuff, which is a dangerous game. But how much of that, I guess, for you all is like, oh yeah, it's easy to sit here and kind of buy in and be patient when I guess your rivals also kind of just coming back down to earth a little bit. Does that factor in for you all? I know, Raul, you're a little bit off on it, but Shu, I know you like to kind of interrogate the Rams club over there.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I think that's just the cycle of how it goes. Duke was always kind of chasing Carolina. Then Coach K wins back-to-backs in 91, 92. And all of a sudden, both programs have 2 national championships apiece. What does Dean do? Dean goes out and, that's when you start getting some of the, I won't call them the fake classes, but there's some stuff that starts happening in 93. They make a Final Four, win the national championship, and 20 years later it goes by and you find out they're just kind of running a paper mill. So, I think for us, for not having them do that, yeah, that probably bought us a little extra time, because had they went through and sealed the deal, that would just amp up the pressure on Jon to get something and get it quick.
After what they did to K too, right?
Sure.
Like it puts a lot of very 09-10-ish almost. Without the titles though, right?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Like, I think we've talked about it before. You can never get really like too high and confident in this rivalry, because it just humbles you like the next season, right? Like every time I've thought like, oh, they're just down for the count, or UNC's thought we were down for the count, right? Like you brought up 09 and 2010. Like, again, UNC wins the title that year. They've landed Harrison Barnes. Duke has not been past the Sweet 16 in a while. You start to think, okay, it's, just Roy is just on top for good. Duke turns around, wins the title, brings in Kyrie Irving, starts getting one and done players, wins in 2015. And then you're like, 2017, it's supposed to be Duke's year. UNC
you just
wins.
Avoided the bullet, but then they win it anyway, right? Yeah, you just dodged the bullet in 2016, and damn it, they don't go back and win it again.
And I think that's kind of what happened in 2024 there, where UNC had a terrible year where they get swept by Duke, missed the tournament when they were preseason number 1. Duke comes in with all the expectations the next season. UNC didn't go on to win the title, but they ended up being a lot better than Duke that year, So, and I think that really plays into like how fans feel about certain seasons too. Like when you look back, the 2024 season was not a bad season. 27-9 made the Elite 8, But for Duke fans, it was because we were preseason number 2 to get swept by Carolina, not win the ACC tournament, lose to NC State in the Elite Eight. It feels like a disappointment, but it's really not.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. Especially when you go back, and I think the only thing, I don't know, I mean, 24 is just weird though because of that, because the regular season did feel so just kind of underwhelming a little bit there at the end, right? And it was kind of like, all right,
like a slog, man. It was a slog.
Yeah, and it was like, all right, where's this gonna go? And then you almost had a little bit of, in a much softer way, of the 2022 thing kind of happened with State instead of Carolina, right? So we just beat State by like 15 or whatever right before that, right? And then they turn around, they beat us in the ACC tournament, and then they go on to beat us again in the Elite Eight, and it's like, so you get to the Elite Eight, which kind of does like, oh, okay, cool. Like we made this run. You get that Houston game, which was like a rock fight there. Obviously, Jamal gets injured right away. Don't have to get into that again. But then you make the Elite Eight, and it's like, all right. But then at that point, I start to buy in again. Like, oh, okay, like this team is just going to find it when it matters. And then Connecticut's waiting there for you. So I don't know how much, it's like the 2018 thing, which is like, that would have been awesome. But, Villanova, which was just dominant, is waiting for you. I'd still love to play them. Don't get me wrong. I ain't scared of it. But, I think being that close, not having getting blown out at all that year, right? No losses by double digits, even with having 8 of them. And then just the gas just ran out, man, again against State. So, that kind of made it suck a little bit, but still
Duke was up at the half in that game, right?
Yeah, and then just the wheels fell off, man. The wheels fell off, man. They got
up like 6 or 8 at the half. It wasn't a lot, but it was a comfortable and I want to say they made like a shot or two to cut into our lead going into the halftime.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah. Yeah, and that's again one of those things where like, okay, we just lost to them. Surely we can get some revenge when it matters the most. And again, yeah, you probably lose to Connecticut in the Final Four, and maybe you even get blown out, but you got a Final Four on your resume. Like John,
you got to get there to get beat. Yeah, you got to get there to get blown out. So it's like, hey, would have taken it. And then if that again, the what ifs, right? But if that then happens, does it change this year? Right? Is there a little bit more of like, this isn't my first time, we're back? Like there's a mission element to it. Maybe not. I don't know.
For Tyrese, right? It's like he clearly learned from the last Elite Eight. Maybe if he gets to the Final Four, he has that kind of experience to take into, go up to the free throw line or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Who knows, man? It's all that butterfly stuff that you can't really think too much about. But, then obviously we've talked a lot about this last year. I don't know how much I want to get into it. But I guess for me, and maybe we should wait till the personal reflections segment, but for me, I think last year was probably the most fun I've had watching a Duke team. And since I was a kid, as an adult, that's for sure been the most fun I've had, was last year. So
I will
really
say
they got it done, but
I will say this about last year's team, because you're right. Now that it's over, like one of my favorite teams I watched, but, I remember being in Hawaii on my anniversary trip, and every day I woke up, I was seeing news of, Sean Stewart's leaving or TJ Powers leaving, and all these, like literally every day I was there, somebody announced they were leaving. And not that those guys, gave us a lot as freshmen, but I thought there was promise in Sean Stewart. I thought there was promise in TJ Power. Sure. Even Jalen Blake's leaving, somebody like that who had done enough for Duke, but wanted to play his last year elsewhere.
Jeremy Roach.
Jeremy Roach, yeah. So like at that time this time last year, I kind of felt like the team was collapsing, even though you got Cooper coming in, you got some talent. I didn't know Khan was going to be what he was. Obviously, come on, we had heard the stories, but he's still raw. He hasn't played anywhere in America. So,
Sure.
So there was some trepidation going into last year, but now looking back, like obviously John crushed it with these guys. And we had just one of the best years since those early 2000s to me. Maybe 2015 was up there, but like domination, like the 2001 team.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, a lot of those transfers and departures were announced before Duke had even landed Sion James. I think Sion was not.
Yeah, he was late.
Like mid to late April, or sorry, mid to late May is what I want to say. Like I want to say like the May 20th or something. So obviously a lot of those other guys had already announced their departure. So, and also, you know, as great as Sion turned out to be, we didn't necessarily know he was going to be that, right? He'd averaged like 13 points at Tulane, you know, on a bad team.
Sure.
You could see the promise, right? You're like, he seems like a versatile defender. He hit 38% of his threes the year before or something. You know, we talked to, what was his name? Isaac, about him on our podcast that we did. And he was, you know, very flattering about Sion. But again, that's a guy who has a natural disposition to like Sion because he knows him personally, right?
Right.
And then it's like Mason. I remember almost being more excited about Mason Gillis, just because he had been at Purdue and he made the title game. But anytime you're losing all of your team besides two guys, it doesn't matter what recruits you're bringing in, right? You're a little worried.
Yeah.
Now I knew Cooper was going to be good, but and there was starting to be some buzz about Khan, but you know, who knows with that stuff either.
Yeah, that summer buzz coming in for Khan really did elevate things for us, though, too, right? It was like, ooh, okay. But yeah, you're bringing back Tyrese. You have Caleb back, right? So you at least felt really good about that. And then it kind of flipped where what I thought Caleb would do, we kind of got that from Sion. Looked different, you know, but production-wise, I think, or role-wise, you got that anyway. But yeah, I mean, you know, you go 19-1, 35-4 overall. I mean, if you look statistically, like, I mean, it's 99 is the only really other one that compares to it from that level. Obviously, you've got some titles in there, which makes them better seasons, you know, better endings. But in terms of what they were doing to the teams they were doing them to, what I mean, again, you know, it goes back to, you know, you were at 14 on a 1 seed, man. Yeah. It's like a half. You were at 14 on a 1, and you lost the game. So it's like that's equally as like kind of dumbfounding, but to be up 14 on a Houston, that level of defense too, you're pretty good. You're pretty
28
good,
minutes into the game, you know, like
so it's not like Houston went on to get blown out by Florida either. They were
now they kind of choked a little bit like we did, man. They kind of just reverse script there a little bit, which is kind of surprising after all that, but or maybe it's not. I don't know.
I remember there being a point like midway through the ACC season where it's like you just see an opponent and mentally you would just circle in a 20 or 30 point
murder.
Win, right?
Murder. Yeah.
I mean, there were a couple games I was nervous for, of course. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I was just, you know, super confident about all of them. But when you're going up to Syracuse, you're going up to Virginia Tech or whatever, you're like, okay, we got this. I think we'll be fine.
Especially the way this team seemed to like it didn't take long for it to just kind of be over. It didn't, you know, when we brought in that, like some guys off the bench, and if like Pat comes in and gets a lob or a block and Isaiah hits a 3, it's like, oh, this is about to just get ugly. And then, cause you know, at one of the halves, probably in the second half, Coop's going to come in and have like 15 on like 6 of 8 shooting after probably being like 2 of 8 in the first, or whatever it ends up being, right? And he's just going to take over when he needs to, or Khan's going to be able to get to that little downhill with Kaman whenever he needs to.
It was fun to just see us wear teams down.
Just so methodical too. Somebody posted that on Twitter. I can't remember who it was. I think it was one of the national guys that was just talking about they just grind you out, man. It's not really exciting. It's just they just beat you in all the margins all the time.
Like how many games did we look at where every quarter, you know, because how Ken Tom will break it down by quarter.
Yeah.
It's like won that quarter by 8 points, won that quarter by 8 points, won that quarter by 7 points, won that quarter by 6 points. Yeah.
Yeah. And if there's one like in the first or like the third of those where like we've lost by like 1 or 2, it's like the next one is like 27-14 or something crazy, right? Where it's just a big run, the kill shot, if you will. So that was fun too, to be able to see. I think that was the most fun of like those moments when that team could just spurt on you, man. Like that first Carolina game where it just gets boom. Even the one in the ACC tournament, man. Like we had to hold on for dear life. That first half, it was just like boom, man. Like we just popped on them.
Yeah, I felt like that was the first team under Scheyer that really was like that explosive.
Had that in them. Yeah. Outside of just McCain going nuclear, right? Exactly. Like it was pretty much that. But yeah, so I mean, I guess that we'll kind of wind that up for our first. What is that? 5 seasons? Gosh,
yeah, it's crazy, right?
Yeah, I mean,
23, 24, 25. So this is our 5th season we're into.
Going into our 5th season almost here. So as we kind of
My
wrap that
COVID
up,
year.
yeah,
COVID year.
we get a COVID year. Any one thing that jumped out to you just from all that? I know we kind of went through everything, but just as everything's kind of settled here, any final takeaways from these four?
I think the steady progression, right, of under Scheyer.
Yeah.
Like how really every year when you look at it has been better on some level than the one before it, right? I know you can debate 23 and 24, but 24 did have a better offense overall, a better Ken Pom rating overall, went further in the tournament. So in ways it was a better season. And then 25, which is a huge jump. So
Yeah.
Now I don't know that entering next season we should expect a jump from last year, but that's because the bar is so high.
Yeah. You just had a great year, man. It's gonna be, we'll see. But it's gonna be hard to top that. Anything for you, Shu? Any kind of just
I mean, dude, again, just the offense this year, just love seeing how it was, some of those seamless plays where, you think you're running a flare screen to Isaiah and all of a sudden Sion's popping for a dunk. Just making the game easy in some ways this year with the team.
Yeah, I think I hate to just pick, but to me, it's that too, man. Just that first year, and even into that second year, a little bit of just we talked all the time. There's 6, 7 minute, 8 minute scoring droughts,
Mhm.
right? Or just like, woo, and thankfully the defense was keeping us in a lot of those games. But the way, and then now you're doing a podcast with Evan Bratt, and he's just talking about how this is the best offense in the country, and it's a pro like offense, and that's just from year 1 to year 3 for that to happen is just super impressive, man. You've already went through a couple coaches on your staff too, so he hasn't even had like full continuity. I think for me it's always going to be a little hard too because I'm just super biased for Jon. Like I was really high on that hire. I thought he was the right guy at the time. We're like almost the same age. He was class of 2010 then, 2011. And so there's always a little bit of that. And as an adult, it's kind of weirdly shifted to where like there were times the last couple of years where like I'm happier for him than I am for like Duke winning. Like from us, like removing like the selfish, like when Duke wins, like I'm happy for me, right? Like I want to win, like I want us to win. I want to watch it win. But there were times when it was genuinely like I'm just happy for him, man. To just get that kind of validation, that pressure, and to just be able to make it there. Obviously, he wants to cut those final nets. I get that. Me too. I was hoping that it was going to be a month or two ago, but it's coming. But yeah. Anything else for y'all got for that, or we can do? There's a few other questions we got here, but.
No, I'd just say we're a pro Jon Scheyer podcast. We're on record as being a pro Jon Scheyer podcast, right?
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully, when we talk to him, hopefully it'll be sometime in July. Kind of would like to get some of the players back in to get a little bit of a feel from him on where things are. But I guess let's kind of shift a little bit away from the actual Duke side of things. But so, what's it been like for y'all just to jump in with this? Like we don't have, I mean, me and Chu don't have any background in kind of media or software or any of this stuff. So what has that process been like? Just kind of doing a podcast, man. Everyone's got a podcast now, right?
Yeah, well, there's something that obviously us three have been kicking around through our messages for years. I do want to give a shout out to the OGs like Chris Bunn. Like I love listening to Chris.
No doubt.
I thought Chris did a great job. Steve, Adam, everybody. But when the opportunity arose for us to kind of take over, obviously we had talked about, doing our own at some point, and then this opportunity come up. Blessed to have been able to do it because, as you guys know, we're all Duke fans lifelong. I didn't actually get into Cameron until I was an adult. So I've never taken it for granted those times that I have had a press pass and been able to sit front row or go in the locker room and talk to players and ask questions, talk to Jon. It's just been a blessing for me. I enjoy doing it. I love talking Duke basketball, especially with you guys. So it's just been awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure we said this on the podcast before, but us three, along with a few other people, have been in a, Facebook message chat together talking Duke basketball for 15 years or something at this point, right? And so I think it was pretty natural, honestly. I remember having a little bit of nerves in that first podcast, but pretty natural to just start talking about it. It's like, oh, this is just kind of a continuation of what we always do anyway, right? But it was super cool to have the actual platform. If we had
Yeah.
started the podcast by ourselves, not through TDD, let's be honest, we would have had like 20 listeners for years, right? It would have taken a while to build it up. So yeah, I don't even remember. Like, I think you just basically talked to Jon about it, and he's like, "Why don't you guys start the podcast?" So that was super cool of him, because we're just message board posters essentially.
Yeah. We just hang out. We're going to talk about this stuff anyway. But it's cool to kind of do it on here with y'all. And I just remember I reached out to Jon. I was like, "Hey man, let's get the podcast going." Like, that was a cool feature. Like, and he was like, "Hey, we don't really have anyone wanting to do it. I think Chris had some stuff career wise, family wise. He just backed off." And so here we are, grabbed a mic, we got it going. And it's been fun, man. It's been really cool. Shouts to Jon, shouts to Adam, all the guys over there, Steve, all the guys that you mentioned.
Obviously
Adam's supporting this thing.
Adam's hooked us up with, press passes many times. She's been able to go to more games than I have, but I remember the first time getting to sit on press row, it wasn't, a great opponent or anything, but it was just totally surreal. Like, obviously the closest I've ever been to the court, right? Like, I think one time before that, I had gotten some comped tickets from Kenny King, who was the academic advisor, athletic advisor or something at that point. And they were like a couple rows behind where Coach K's, was sitting on the bench and stuff. So it was close, right? I remember being like right behind the Currys. But this, when you're on press row, is even closer. There's literally nothing between you and the court.
Yeah.
I mean, like, that's coming from somebody who, despite living in Durham all my life, I had never been to Cameron until I was like in my 30s, essentially. So it's been a pretty recent phenomenon.
Yeah, I didn't go until I was an adult either. I mean, I went to a lot of games in college. I had met someone that worked at the chapel when I went down there. This was 2009. So that was really cool, because I went to Countdown to Craziness, did the tour, ran into some folks, and she ended up just kind of feeding me a bunch of tickets. And I probably went to like 12 games that year down there, which, I think that's cool though, because it also like I remember as a kid, like my dad still never seen a game in Cameron. Right. And so you're just like indoctrinated with the like mystique of the place, with the like, whatever you want to call that, the aura, verve, whatever it is that Cameron holds. I mean, it's not just this like spoken thing. Like, I felt that as a kid. And so even living in North Carolina, that's a 3-hour drive from Charlotte, but still we do that all the time now. Right. But, at the time, man, it's really cool to be able to be in that kind of hallowed space there. I guess the last thing,
I'll say, I wanted to just say, like, when we talked about taking over the pod, I didn't want to do it to become like Twitter famous or something, because you guys know I hate Twitter. I
never really engaged too much either. No.
So, it wasn't anything like that. We weren't running ads. We weren't trying to get rich off of it. I got a good job. I just wanted to talk Duke basketball and hopefully get a couple tickets to go to a game or two here and there. So that part of it's definitely worked out. It's been, all my wildest dreams, being in the locker room and talking to players, interviewing them, talking to Jared McCain or Flip or, I don't think, I guess I didn't never talk to Paulo. Coop wasn't really available the couple of times this year, so I didn't get to talk to him, but it's just been a neat experience all in all.
Yeah, I was going to ask too, who would be your favorite guest? Because I think that's one of the coolest perks that we've had is that, well, I like that you put that on that roll. Let's take Jon off, right? Because obviously
that'd be everybody's.
Yeah, you get Coach to come on twice, hopefully for a third time this summer. That's up there. That's the one, right? Anytime you can get the head coach to come on. But outside of that, is there one or two that y'all can come up with? I think for me, just being able to like talk to some of the guys that I like. I had Ben Golliver come on like really early. I'd read his book Bubble Ball. I
was so nervous for that one.
That was a big one. That was just me and you, wasn't it? Yeah. We had Ben on. Obviously, he does the greatest of all talk, and it's just super articulate, super well spoken. This is his job. He's a professional.
And very funny too, right?
Yeah. Shouts to Ben for coming on. We were just started this thing.
Yeah.
Shouts for him for coming on. That was really cool. And we've had Dan Favale come on twice. That's really cool too, to have those guys that, we were sitting there on our message boards in 2019, just like recapping Hardwood Knocks episodes, just talking about like all the NBA draft stuff, all the NBA stuff going on. So those guys are probably up there. Maybe some more. Anybody for y'all? I'll let y'all kind of pop in here too.
You talking about guests as far as like podcast guests, or talking to the players? Like,
Let's do guys
interviews?
that have come on. Yeah, people that have come on here.
Go ahead, Raul. What do you have another one?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of the one that popped into my head was Jeff Goodman.
Okay, yeah,
Just because he's such a big media personality, and I've seen him on TV for years and years before
Yeah.
we started doing this podcast, right? And both times he's come on here, he's been so personable and easy to talk to.
Yep.
Right. Like there's no intimidation factor. For whatever reason, he puts you like immediately at ease. And the episodes have been really entertaining to listen back to too, because he keeps the energy so high. You know what I mean? Like, and he always has a take for everything. Like, I don't always agree with every single one of them, but they're always entertaining.
Yeah, shouts to Jeff, because he's like that in real life. We ran into him at Cameron too.
Yeah.
He's the same way in real life too.
And I just figured I'd mention that because we could plug. We're going to have him on eventually here.
Yeah, we'll get him on here. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I'm the same though, Jeff, because like you said, talking to a national media guy, and we're I would call us faux journalists. Again, like Josh said, I didn't go to school to do any of this stuff. But again, somebody that's been in the game for a long time and just kind of making us feel at ease talking to them, and like you said, real personable, easy going. So yeah, Jeff's a good one.
Yeah, I think maybe the only other one that one of the ones I was the most nervous for was probably when we had Ian O'Connor come on too, because that is you're published, 6 different books, 7 different books, like a ton of different books. Like, I mean, he's up there, right? Like, just speaking to someone at that level that's like, oh, you're like a successful published author. Like, that's pretty cool. And I'm just kind of doing this on a whim over here. So, and his book was good. So it was cool to have him on to talk about that.
Yeah, I literally just read it when he came on. And
I breezed through it when he got on.
There's still some guys that I want us to talk to that we've kicked around in the past. Obviously, my guy Patrick, Ninth Wonder. I'd love to chat with him because I know he's at Coach K Academy every year, and he's a big Duke fan. He knows what's going on, so he would definitely be up there in my list of who I want to chat to going forward.
Yeah, and we've had a couple players on and stuff too. That was always cool. Like Andre Dawkins.
Yeah. Before we do get out of here, Shu, you kind of had me thinking here. Is there someone, if you could pick one that you're going to invite on and they're going to accept, who you got? Not Coach K.
Not Coach K. So in our time, like doing this, like me being in the locker room, and I've mentioned it before, I love talking to Tyrese just because I love hearing him just talk. We talk about anything, just love hearing him talk. But Jeremy, we did what, 2 years of
media
tip-off, media day stuff with him. And then obviously I was at a handful of the games with the press pass, talking to him in the locker room. Jeremy and I feel like had some of the same things in common. Like, obviously, he's like produces music and stuff like that. So I don't know. It was always cool to talk with Jay. So maybe him.
Okay.
I mentioned Lively earlier. I think Austin Rivers would be a fun one. Because I feel like he wouldn't hold back. You know what I mean? He would just kind of say whatever he thought. That's one. Shane Battier. I mean, we've heard him on podcasts, and he's always great, man. Love that guy. So there's a lot of like former players I would love to get on. It's just a question of whether you think how open you think they would be, right? Because various guys are very guarded with the media, and you don't really want that as much. But anybody who you think is going to give you kind of like honest, interesting answers. Obviously, JJ Redick, but that ship has sailed with him being the Lakers coach now. So
yeah, there's a lot. If we're talking like kind of players that we've kind of covered, I would want to say Cooper, but then it's like that I'm not even going to be able to see Cooper, right? You're gonna see the meat, and it just has to be that, man. This kid has been inundated with this. But for me, I remember me and Raul, like I was super, super high on this kid from like the moment I'd even heard his name and started like kind of following him. And I was like, no, we got to get this kid a Duke. I think this is the most hyped I've been for recruits since Kyrie Irving. and then for that to just kind of like matriculate and just work, and just him to have all that success too, and to carry Duke with, not that he carried Duke, it was a team thing, I get that. But for it to all kind of accumulate that way, obviously you didn't get the ring there to cap it off, but it wasn't his fault, man. It wasn't his fault. That would be one up there. The other one, man, is he's on the staff, man. Chris Carrawell would be probably in my top 3 guys from Duke that I'd like to interview. I just think that like he seems super down to earth. He played at a time that like was just really awesome for Duke too, on some really good teams with some really good players. He just kind of brought that. He brought his city with him a little bit too. Like he still has that. Like he's been a Durham resident now probably for 20 something years, but like he's still just Chris, man. And so I think that would be a good one to have on too. I think that he would tell it like it is. So that'd be fun.
You don't want to get brutally roasted by Coach K?
Yeah. No, thanks, man. I don't want to.
I just feel like I'd be so nervous. Yeah.
I will say that I did email Coach K and got a personal email back, and I was like, it's probably not from him. And they were like, no, it is from him. So I was like, oh, that was kind of cool. So,
well, apparently, if he roasts you, that means he likes you. So it's a good thing. Not a bad thing.
Yeah. I'd have to, I'd be really nervous for that one. Absolutely. So yeah. And I think that would be the number one, right? Obviously if Coach K wants to come on, that's the podcast of the podcast there, but, yeah. Anything else from you all, man? If not, man, we can kind of wrap this one up. I know we've been going an hour here.
I just, again, shouts to John and Adam for allowing us to be able to do this.
Yeah, it has been really cool, man. Especially like when we've done the media day and you just bump into Seth Greenberg or Jay Billis and just interacting with those guys as peers, and then we go back to our day job. It's kind of cool. See
Chris,
Carlos, who's there.
Josh and I talked to Coach Bray outside for like 10 minutes, like we were like,
oh, dude, I was almost about to be like, man, you want to hit a hooligans over here? Like, let's go.
Let's go get a drink. Yeah, he looked like he had no, I'm not gonna say.
Yeah. It looked like retirement was planned, right? It's coming. I'm about to hit the course.
Should have invited him on, actually.
Yeah, that would have been.
He was on staff.
Yeah, that would have been really good one, man. Mike was super cool. But yeah, and obviously, I guess, we'll segue out of here and just thank y'all, especially our close friends and stuff that have really been with us here, kind of supported us along the way. We appreciate you. It's been 200 episodes, man. That seems kind of crazy for us, but so we appreciate that. Obviously we're going to chart to go to video, hoping that this one makes its way there, unless one of us just looks absolutely terrible. If not, you might see our ugly mugs on there now, but you can check that out at Devil's Den 247 over on YouTube. We do got some NBA draft stuff coming up, probably get Brian Geisinger back on. Raul talked about Jeff coming on, and obviously we've been talking a little bit to Coach. Hopefully that's going to kind of happen somewhere in July. Got one other one that I'm really hoping can happen here too, with some analytics stuff. That would be really fun. In the meantime, rate, review, subscribe. You can email us at TheDevilsDenPod@gmail.com. You can find us on X/Twitter at DevilsDenPod247, and keep the faces strong and never bye. Go Duke.